Welcome to You've Got This with Sarah Hamaker, a podcast to encourage and equip moms along their parenting journey. Join Sarah each week as she interviews dads and moms like you and discusses the joys, challenges, and rewards of raising kids.
Hi, and welcome to this week's You've Got This. I'm your host, Sarah Hamaker, and I'm glad you joined me. Today, I have Lettice Barnum with me. She is a busy stay-at-home mom to 5 young children, including 4 wildly energetic boys and 1 incredibly loved baby girl. She and her husband, Ryan, are co-founders of Achieving Family Goals, where they blog about all things goal-related. They chronicle the experiences and lessons learned from working on their own 100 life goals list while encouraging others to do the same by writing about goals, habits, productivity, and reviewing any kind of product that might help people achieve their goals. I love that. That sounds like so much fun. So welcome, Lettice.
Thank you.
So today we're going to talk about kids, as we often do on this parenting podcast, but more specifically about having multiple children. Now, as my listeners know, I have 4 kids. Lettice has 5. So between us, we have 9 kids. Yay. I think that's great. I will say that, and you may have found this to be true as well, that when we were expecting number 4, I got the strangest comments. Probably because my first 2 were girls, and then we had a boy, and we never found out the gender when we were expecting. It didn't bother us. We were happy for the surprise at the end.
Same here.
Right. And so, but I was surprised at how many times I either got, I actually had one person actually tell me, why are you having another child?
Oh,
now, did you ever run into any kind of like pushback from strangers, family, having more than like 2 or 3 kids?
Thankfully, not so much from family, because I think that would have been a dagger to the heart.
Yeah.
But definitely from strangers. 2 of our 5 are adopted, and so number 3 is adopted and number 5 is adopted. And when we've had them since they were born, and so I was, pushing around a baby in the grocery store, an infant, newborn, yet I was pregnant with our 4th at the same time. They're 4 months apart.
Okay.
And I got some pretty strange looks, especially during that time. Like, this poor woman, she is, I looked very clearly I was pregnant. But then on the flip side, I had an infant,
right.
And so I'm sure it did look strange to people who didn't know my situation. But there have been multiple times, unfortunately, really, that I've been in the store or out and about doing things, and I've had people give looks or make little comments and stuff. And it used to really, really bother me, but I'm like, what? No, I love my kids. And with each one of them, my husband and I both felt very strongly that it was time now for another one. And I feel like each of them came at the perfect time. And so I just have to learn to, roll with the punches, I guess. But on the flip side, having those, negative looks or comments really makes the sweet, the genuinely kind comments mean that much more. Because I have had several people also come up to me and say, good job, that's great that you have so many little ones, and keep at it. It's going to go quickly. And just all these good, nice, loving comments. So the bad makes the good so much better.
Yeah, and I think that, my kids are older now. They're between 10 and 16. And teenagers are wonderful. Just always have to put that plug out there. I have teenage girls, and they're great. I expect my boys are going to be great, too, as teenagers. But I think that one of the things that I've always tried to do as a mom, at whatever stage I am with my own kids, is when you see that other mom out there, no matter if she has 1 kid or, 8 kids, or anyone in between, is to be encouraging instead of negative. We never know that person's situation. I used to, when I took all 4 of them to the store, but I got comments like, are they all yours? I'm like, what? Do you think I'm just picking kids up in the parking lot? Come on, let's go to the store. Because, going to the store with kids is great.
Oh, yeah. I'm so grateful for grocery pickup nowadays.
Yes, exactly. But just those kind of things, and I just kind of learned, I think, that, one, people have really, and I think it's only gotten worse, lost that filter that stops them from saying what's going on in their head. So I think that sometimes they just blurt these things out. And 2, I think that, for whatever reason, it depends on what area you live in. I'm in Northern Virginia, a lot of high-powered people all around. So the idea of trying to juggle more than 2 kids, I think, is really hard for people to kind of process.
Right.
I got a lot of, oh, you must be really tired. I'm like, well, do I look tired? I thought I looked pretty good today. or just, and I guess I've tried to be like, oh no, I love the kids, to be really positive, even if it's a slightly negative comment. But you're right. It is hard in that moment, and you don't want your kids to hear that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, do you ever have conversations after that with your kids, when someone says something negative?
So actually, my oldest, he's 7 now, and I don't remember exactly when this happened, but one time he said something along the lines, and I don't remember the details, but the idea was he basically said, I'm sorry, Mama, that that there's a lot of us, and we may be tired or whatever. He was really internalizing those comments that he would hear, and specifically one that day, I guess. And to him, it blew me away. It broke my heart for him. No, don't think of yourself as a burden. I love you. And so I had to, I did in that moment have to stop and really have a little conversation with him. No, I don't remember exactly what I said, but hopefully, and I think in the moment I helped him feel better. And since then, he's never mentioned it again. But yeah, kids, they do hear those things and they take them in. And whether or not they say something is maybe another story. But in that moment, it was definitely wow. And so that's a reminder that we got to be careful about what we say around kids, because they pick it up and they take that weight on themselves sometimes.
Right, and I found that I would, these comments were not constant. I don't want my listeners to get that they were. And you're right, there was some positives in there as well. But I always made sure that if there was a negative, that either I said something if I could get my wits about me to say, oh, no, they're all mine. And I love it. We were blessed to have 4 children, or to say something later, remember, you're in our family. This is the family God gave us.
Yes.
And, that we're very happy with this family. I am not overly exhausted about having all you kids. Sometimes we would, not constantly, but I would make sure that, because you're right, kids, we forget how much kids hear, and because they're young, they can so easily either misinterpret a comment or take that to heart and think, oh, it's their fault that Mom is getting all these comments about XYZ, kind of thing. Right. So, I think it's a lesson for all of us when we're out and about, is just to watch what we say to moms, especially. Definitely. It doesn't take that much more effort to be encouraging, as it is to be discouraging. Because I'm just telling you, as moms, we know when our kid is misbehaving. We know that. And hopefully we are paying attention to it, but we really don't, we really honestly don't need anyone else to tell us. So
Right. That only makes the stress of the situation more.
Yes.
Not needed.
Right. And I think that, one of the things we learned with having multiple children, when we went out to eat or something, or even with a couple of kids, to prepare them for what they need, how they should behave in public.
Definitely.
To not just expect them to, learn it by osmosis, behave yourself. Well, what does that mean? Give them the tools for that. Can you talk a little bit, how do you prepare your children when you go out into the world?
Well, one thing quickly that came to my mind is that we always ask, like after Sunday school when we pick our kid up from their class, or I homeschool my kids, so we belong to a homeschool co-op, and when I would pick them up out of their individual classes, I always ask their teacher, or if they're at a friend's house, or whoever's taking charge of my child when I'm not around, a babysitter, whoever, I always ask them, how were they? And people come to realize that I'm genuine when I want to truly know how my child acted. And thankfully, for the most part, I get good comments. They were great, they answered questions or whatever. But every now and then, I might have a teacher or someone say, well, they were a little energetic today. And to me, that's the okay, they did
that's
something.
That's code for a little, maybe not.
Yeah.
Paying as close attention as they should have.
Yeah, and so then I address it immediately. I don't do it right there, in the middle of the Sunday school room or something. As soon as we leave, then I say, I talked to so-and-so and they said this. Can you tell me about that? And they usually are, they're quick to say, yeah, I did that, or, well, blah, they'll tell me what happened. And so then I correct them in that moment. And then for the next time, I remind them. I don't necessarily always bring up the negative of, well, last time you did blah, blah, blah. I think being positive is, positive reinforcement, I believe is a really good thing. But so then I remind them, okay, whatever, maybe last time if they were, whatever they might have been doing last time, I say, okay, and remember, we sit quietly, or this time, remember to listen to her when she asks you to do this, or, you know what I mean? Just, I think that the big thing is correcting incorrect behavior immediately, because kids aren't going to remember 5 days later what they did,
Right.
But also, like you said, just before you get somewhere, just talking to them. Okay, we're going to go in the grocery store, and I need you to walk beside me, and and then explain why we do it quickly and shortly, and when you have their attention, and and their kids. I think that's a big thing we need to remember. They're kids. Their mind is all over the place, and they're energetic and everything like that. And so it's okay that they need reminders. And also another big thing is to be the example too.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And I also wanted to talk to you about, you have 4 boys. I have 2 boys. And let me tell you, girls can be pretty wild, too, just so you know.
Okay.
I had a friend who had 2 boys first and then 2 girls. And when she had the 2 boys and I had the 2 girls, she came over one time and my girls were shrieking around the house. And she goes, I really didn't believe you when you said your girls were loud. I was like, yeah, they kind of get that. But that energetic nature of kids in general, I kind of think that has been, I don't know, like people have forgotten, how kids behave. And so, so how do you kind of handle that? Because, they have a lot of energy and they need to get it out in a way that is appropriate. And sometimes I think that line of appropriateness has been, people don't know where that is anymore.
Right. Yeah. So I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that's something that I've been thinking a lot about lately. Our topic, staying sane, one thing that I think that can really help you to stay sane is to just stop nagging, stop saying no all the time, or stop that, or get down, or whatever, all those things. And a couple months ago, I was visiting my parents, and my oldest, he was just being silly. He wasn't being bad. He was just talking a lot, very energetic, running around, just being silly. Not bad by any means. And I was trying to cook dinner and just everything going on. And towards the end of the day, and I'm tired, and I could feel myself starting to get impatient with him just because it was just a lot of background noise, and I just was ready for it to stop. But I was trying really hard to be patient, and I think my dad saw that in me, and he kind of chuckled, and he said, you know, the other day he was doing this, and I started to say, stop being, and he's like, I was so annoyed in that moment, and my reaction, I wanted to say something, you know, something along the lines of like, stop being annoying or something, but obviously we don't want to tell that to our children. Right. But he said, I said, stop being, and then immediately came to his mind a 7-year-old. And he said, I stopped what I was doing because it was a realization that he's not doing anything wrong. He's just being a kid. And so I think that it's so important for us to remember that they're being kids. Obviously, we can't allow them to be destructive or disrespectful. Right. And they need to know when, you know, there's a time and a place to be silly and crazy and running around and this and that. But life is to be enjoyed, not to just be lived. And childhood is a really special part of life, and it should be a carefree time of life. And you're right, they are naturally super energetic. And I think that a major way to stay sane is just to remember that they are kids, and that if they're not being bad, it's okay that they're being a little crazy. As long as they're not being destructive, they're remaining polite and respectful, and that they can cool it when the time comes, when they need to be calm.
Right, and I love that because, again, we need to encourage our kids to be kids. They don't need to be little quiet adults.
Yeah,
they should have the freedom to be their age. And one of the joys I get is watching my kids through their various stages be those silly kids. And to, you know, remind myself that, yeah, it is, sometimes it gets really noisy. And sometimes, you know, like it's like almost 8 o'clock last night. My boys were running through the house, and we had to say, hey, you know, this is not the time to be running through the house when, you know, you're going to bed within an hour. You know, you need to calm down. But on the other hand, they were being funny. So it was kind of, I really kind of hated to say stop running, but you know, because they were being their tween boy thing, and you love that they play and they're loud, and of course when they get bigger they do sound more like elephants clopping through the house with their, you know, big slippers on and stuff. So but yeah, I think that is so important for parents to remember that, you know, to give your child the joy of having a childhood where they can be loud and obnoxious and silly and be their age without a grown-up constantly telling them, stop, no, kind of thing. So right before, we're almost to the end of our time today, but can you talk a little bit about, you have this 100 life goals list. What is all that about?
So when my husband and I first got married, we read about a man who wrote down life goals, and it was amazing to see, because he wrote them down and committed them. Not necessarily that he memorized them, but they were in his mind at that point. Just the opportunities that arose as he lived life and had committed to he had set those goals, and how he accomplished them all. And it was just amazing. And we felt really strongly that we should do that. So at the beginning of our marriage, we wrote, and then we read another book that the man said make 100 life goals. And so we decided to do that. And it's true. It's amazing that when you write these things down, it might not be something that you think of all 100 of them every single day. But opportunities arise, and it's amazing how much you can accomplish. And if you have goals, you're going places. You're working hard. You're never bored, because when you do start to find yourself bored, you can look back on that list and, well, what can I do right now to work towards something that I want to do or be or whatever. And it's been a really big part of our relationship, goals, and we've grown in a lot of different ways because of it. And now with our kids, our oldest two that are 5 and 7, they talk about things they want to do and see, and it's really awesome that we can see their little personalities and their talents and stuff. And we love it. And so that's why we started our website, is because we want to share with people and inspire them to create these goals to make themselves and their lives and their situations better and more fulfilling. So.
Oh, I love that. I love that, Lettice. And that's a great way, I think, to end our show for today. You've been listening to You've Got This. I'm your host, Sarah Hammaker, and today I've been talking to Lettice Barnum. She's a busy stay-at-home mom to 5 young children, and she and her husband, Ryan, co-founded Achieving Family Goals, where they blog about all things goal-related, and you can find that link to their website along with this podcast. So thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to this week's podcast of You've Got This with Sarah Hammaker. Sign up to receive notification of new podcasts and listen to previous editions at sarahhammaker.com. Until next time, remember, parenting might be hard sometimes, but don't worry, you've got this.